Why does a government feel it must continue being the same way it was under the Mzungu, to exploit us, extract from us, and dominate us? When we make noise, we are beaten. A government believes it's supposed to do everything. It now even pretends it can build us our houses. All right? And it's a con. It takes our land. It's government land, taxpayers' land. Takes our money from our salaries, to build, and then comes back to sell to you. I mean, please tell me how this is a formula. You take our money and then you sell back the same thing to us. You build your own house, then you sell it back to yourself. You even hear them saying, oh, we got excess housing fund money and we put in treasury bills. So now you go and borrow your own money and then come to us for taxation to pay that, which you had collected from us in the first place. What is this game? What is going on here? William Ruto, you charlatan, you unhinged charlatan. The Auditor General is the one who is supposed to audit debt within 6 months of the end of a financial year. We have not seen an audit. The new Minister of Finance got there, said he's going to do an audit. We've never seen it. Nobody will audit. Nobody wants to audit because they know exactly what is going to come out when they audit. We are going to see right through what has happened, and they're not about to do it. William Ruto is not about to change this because he's a participant. He was before and he still is even today. Anybody who is a beneficiary of the previous regime or this regime is a participant in this plunder. They are not going to change our lives. They are going to continue it. And we actually are at a precipice. It took Argentina 20 years to realize they have totally collapsed and just say, to hell with it. We are going a different way. We are going to fagia wote and choose somebody that has been screaming as a loner, a footballer, who's an economist, and we are going that way and we don't care. And they're starting to breathe life because they were so captured by these charlatans from one party, one element of the country to the other. Here we are. And we need to understand that this is a system. And that system is premised by the colonial government that came here. In 1920, we were colonized as Kenya. That is when Kenya got its name. 1920, we were called Kenya. And it's just because the Mzungu could not pronounce Kirinyaga. He saw the mountain, he heard it's being called Kirinyaga, and then he called it Kenya. He could not pronounce Kirinyaga. We were called Kenya in 1920. And what many people don't understand is that we were colonized by a private company. That private company was called Imperial British East Africa. That came here in 1889, right? Forced a protectorate in 1902, but then became the government of Kenya. In other words, that company, which came here under the scramble for Africa to extract, to exploit us as the native Africans, and to dominate us, is the one that took over. Their watchmen became the first police of Kenya. Kenya Police Force were their watchmen who were guarding their properties. To dominate us. It is not akin to the behavior today. The police are not there to serve us, they are there to dominate us. The regime is still about plunder, to fight against this colonialist of this country called Kenya that we love so much. They fought for two things. They fought for freedom and they fought for land. Land was the economic. Freedom was for our political liberation. And that political liberation we got at independence. Our own African took over. But what we have never gotten, even in the subsequent second liberation, that climaxed with the new constitution in 2010, the one that brought multipartyism and the new constitution, second liberation, is we've never had an economic. We've gotten great political rights. But that constitution embedded our economic liberation, our rights. Section 43 talks about our rights. Every human being. Chapter 12, our controls of our money that we contribute to the exchequer. And anything such as debt, which is something to be passed from future generation, that this is the accountability. This is the only way you can do it. It can only be done for this purpose. We have never had our economic, the land our forefathers fought for before our independence in 1960, 62. Today, only 20% of the country's land is titled. 20%. That is community, government, and private land. Why? What is this stranglehold? Why does a government feel it must continue being the same way it was under the Mzungu, to exploit us, extract from us, and dominate us? When we make noise, we are beaten. A government believes it's supposed to do everything. It now even pretends it can build us our houses. All right? And it's a con. It takes our land, it's government land, taxpayers' land. It takes our money from our salaries, to build, and then comes back to sell to you. I mean, please tell me how this is a formula. You take our money and then you sell back the same thing to us. You build your own house, then you sell it back to yourself. You even hear them saying, oh, we got excess housing fund money and we put in treasury bills. So now you go and borrow your own money and then come to us for taxation to pay that, which you had collected from us in the first place. What is this game? What is going on here? Is that you have a system where the government is a private company. It is just a predator to us. And we'll never survive with this predator. People believe when you enter government, that's when you're supposed to make money. That's when I become rich, because I'm an MCA or I'm an MP or I'm an appointee of the president. I'll make money. What nonsense. Government is supposed to be a place of service. So where is this thing? What happened? And it's premised on the government that was formed in 1920 that has just kept mutating, but it's the same thing. So we need to change it. We need to keep it in context. We need to say government from now on, right, must just do things that the private sector cannot do. And I quote Milton Friedman here. And it's simply this. The government, for example, must do our army, because there's no private force that can secure our borders against outside predators. This government doesn't do an excellent job of it, but they're trying. We have never imagined in this country that we're sitting in fear because there's a neighboring country that can come and buy us. So we thank our military, and we hope that they are steady for any outside aggression. That the private sector cannot do. The government cannot, the private sector cannot dispute anything about people being unlawful. You need a police force to adjudicate disputes, to adjudicate criminals, to figure out how to enforce the laws. Right? That the private sector cannot do. Our police does a very poor job of it. Even more so, they're even an oppression to us. So we must look at an oversight of them, a greater oversight than what is happening. And we have proposals that we're going to start electing OCPDs here, so that they're accountable to the people directly. Then a government a private sector cannot be a place of adjudication of disputes, a court. So you need courts. That's a government role. You also need parliament. No matter what, you need parliament. Parliament helps us create fairness, equity. It helps those that are not able to help themselves. Create parameters where excesses are also dealt with. If there's a private sector that is running away in a particular direction, to rein them in through law. So we need a parliament. Really, outside of that, what the hell else is government doing? The private sector can do the rest, literally. Right? You can add that government can come in for humanitarian needs. When there's a crisis, when there's this, yes. Nobody here should starve when there's a government. Nobody here should be homeless because of a flood, right? So those are interventions the government must do. There's no private sector can do it. But aside from that, the private sector should be allowed to take the reins. In America today and in Europe and in most Western democracies, this so-called first world William Ruto is talking about, the private sector are richer than the government. They're the ones where you find the rich people, the Elon Musks, the Steve Jobs, Apple, companies, right? This is where you find them, the absence of the world and so on. Right? The private sector is wealthy. They are reined in by regulation, so they do not eat mwananchi. Okay? And really, William Ruto, you charlatan, you unhinged charlatan, you compare Kenya to a first world? In which lifetime are you talking about? Let me just give you a simple first world statistic. Power generation. China, the great and the second largest economy in the world, is a first world nation. 45 years ago, that economy was smaller than Kenya's. I want you to imagine that. They had 700 million people and their GDP was smaller than Kenya's. 45 years ago, it was just similar to Malawi. China today generates 2 million megawatts of power per year. 2 million megawatts of power per year. They are producing 300,000 megawatts of renewable power per year, replacing the old coal plants and creating new power from wind, from solar. That is China. All right? That is China. Okay? Now, you come to our dear country, and even near us, South Africa, which is the largest power producer on this continent, produces 50,000 megawatts of power. That's South Africa per year. Egypt is next. It has 30,000 megawatts of power. Nigeria is next at 30,000 megawatts of power, of which about 8,000 are independent. In other words, people producing on their own. And a lot of Nigeria power is gensets, unfortunately. Now we as a country, Kenya, remember China, first world, 2 million? We have available 3,400 megawatts of power. That is what is installed. What we actually are producing is 2,200 megawatts of power. When do you ever imagine you are going to get to 2 million megawatts of power being produced? Please, stop giving us empty talk. Let us talk about Kenya as it is today. It is a disaster. And we are tired of all of you charlatans. This game must change. This game must change. It must change.